I'm free now and already sold the house. Victoria's voice came through the hotel phone in Paris like a knife. After 16 years of marriage, she was informing me, not asking. I calmly said, I understand completely, and hung up. What Victoria didn't know was that the house she'd just sold wasn't legally hers to sell, and my response would cost her everything. My name is Ryan Blackwood. I'm 44 years old and I work as an international business consultant, which means I spend about 200 days a year away from home. It's good money, really good money, but it's hard on relationships. Victoria always said she understood when we got married 16 years ago. She said she was independent, that she didn't need me hovering around all the time. I was calling her from my hotel room at the Marriott near Charles de Gaulle Airport, same as I did every night when I traveled. Usually we'd talk about her day, my meetings, plans for when I got home. This conversation was different from the moment she answered. Ryan, she'd said, not honey or how was your day, just my name like I was a business associate. Hey babe, how are things at home? Actually, I need to tell you something. I've been thinking a lot while you've been gone and I've made some decisions. My stomach dropped. In 16 years of marriage, Victoria had never made unilateral decisions about anything important. We discussed everything from changing the cable package to buying new furniture. What kind of decisions? I filed for divorce yesterday. The papers are being served to your office tomorrow, and I sold the house this morning. Cash offer, closing in 2 weeks. I sat down hard on the hotel bed. Our house in Westchester, New York, the 4-bedroom colonial we'd bought 8 years ago and spent a fortune renovating. The house where we'd planned to raise kids before we found out Victoria couldn't have children. The house that had become our entire shared life. Victoria, what's going on? Is this about me traveling so much? We can figure something out. It's not about your traveling, Ryan. I don't want to be married anymore. I want my own life, my own space, my own decisions. But the house, we bought that together. You can't just sell it without discussing it with me. Actually, I can. My name's on the deed too, and I found a buyer who was willing to pay asking price immediately. The money will be split according to New York law. That's when she delivered the line that would haunt me. I'm free now and already sold the house. I told her I understood completely and hung up. But what Victoria didn't understand was that 3 years ago, when I'd gotten a huge consulting contract with a European firm, I'd restructured our finances for tax purposes. The house wasn't just jointly owned anymore. Victoria and I met in 2008 at a business conference in Chicago. I was 28, building my consulting practice, and she was 25, working in marketing for a pharmaceutical company. We connected immediately over our shared ambition and love of travel. For the first few years, my travel schedule actually worked in our favor. Victoria would join me on trips to London, Barcelona, and Singapore. We lived like nomads with a home base, exploring the world together while building our careers. We bought the Westchester house in Twining with a substantial down payment from my growing consulting income. Victoria had contributed her savings too, about $60,000, and we'd taken out a mortgage for the rest. Both our names went on the deed because that's what married couples do. But things started changing around 2019. Victoria stopped wanting to travel with me. She said she was tired of living out of suitcases and wanted to build something still at home. I understood, or thought I did. She started spending more time with her sister and her sister's friends. Going to wine tastings and yoga classes. She joined a book club and began taking pottery classes on weekends. I encouraged all of it. I wanted her to have her own life when I was away. The first real warning sign came last year when she stopped asking about my trips. Before, she'd want to know about the cities I visited, the clients I met, what restaurants I tried. Suddenly, she'd just nod when I told her I was leaving for London or Frankfurt. Then came the phone behavior. Victoria had always been casual about her phone, leaving it on counters, asking me to check messages while she was driving. Last Christmas, she started taking it everywhere, even to the bathroom. When I mentioned it, She said she was just being more careful since there'd been phone thefts in our neighborhood. The final warning was 2 months ago when I came home from a 3-week trip to Asia. Victoria seemed different, more confident, more distant. She'd redecorated our bedroom without asking, replacing our photos with abstract art. When I asked about it, she said she was exploring her personal aesthetic. But I'd been traveling for business for 15 years. I'd learned to read people, to notice when something was off, and something was definitely off with Victoria. So 3 months ago, I'd done something I'd never done before. I hired a private investigator. Not to spy on Victoria exactly, but to understand what was happening in my own life. I was gone so much that I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. I needed to know if I was being paranoid or if my instincts were right. The investigator's report had arrived 2 weeks ago while I was in Germany. Victoria had been having an affair for 8 months with her financial advisor, a 34-year-old guy named Trevor who worked at the wealth management firm where she'd started investing her inheritance money from her grandmother. But it wasn't just an affair. According to the report, Victoria had been planning her exit strategy for months. She'd opened a new bank account, consulted with a divorce attorney, and even looked at apartments in Manhattan. The house sale wasn't impulsive, it was calculated. What Victoria didn't know was that in 2021, when I'd landed the European consulting contract, my accountant had suggested restructuring our assets for tax efficiency. I'd transferred the house into a limited liability company I owned, with Victoria listed as a beneficiary but not an owner. She'd signed the papers along with a dozen other tax documents, probably not reading the details. I hadn't hidden anything from her, but I'd assumed she understood what she was signing. The house she'd just sold didn't legally belong to her, and the buyer she'd found was about to discover that the person who'd signed the sales contract didn't have the authority to sell the property. I spent that night in Paris making phone calls. First to my attorney in New York, then to my accountant, then to the LLC's registered agent. By morning, we'd filed an emergency injunction to stop the sale. My flight home wasn't until the next evening, so I had 24 hours to think about how I wanted to handle this. I could have called Victoria immediately, explained the situation, tried to work something out, but she'd chosen to blow up our marriage while I was 4,000 miles away. She'd sold our home without a conversation. She'd planned her escape while playing the role of loving wife whenever I was home. I decided to let her find out the hard way. I landed at JFK on Thursday evening and drove straight home. Victoria's car wasn't in the driveway, which wasn't surprising. According to the investigator's report, she'd been spending most nights at Trevor's apartment in the city. I walked through our house looking at 16 years of shared life that Victoria had been so eager to discard. Wedding photos still on the mantel, vacation souvenirs from trips we'd taken together, the kitchen table where we'd eaten breakfast together whenever I was home. It felt like visiting a museum of my own life. My phone rang at 9 p.m. Victoria. Ryan, we need to talk. There's some kind of problem with the house sale. What kind of problem? The buyer's attorney is saying the sale can't proceed because I don't have clear title. That's ridiculous. My name is on the deed. Where are you? I'm staying with my sister for a few days, but that's not important. What's important is fixing this title issue so the sale can close. We should probably meet in person to discuss it. Victoria agreed to come to the house the next morning. She arrived at 10 a.m. looking like she'd barely slept. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail and she was wearing jeans and a sweater I didn't recognize. Okay, she said without even greeting me. What's going on with the house? I handed her a folder containing the LLC documents from 2021. You might want to review these. Victoria flipped through the pages, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding to horror. This says the house is owned by Blackwood Properties LLC, not by us jointly. That's correct, but I signed papers when we bought the house. My name is on the deed. Your name is on the original deed, yes, But when we restructured for tax purposes in 2021, the house was transferred to the LLC. You're listed as a beneficiary, but you're not an owner. Victoria stared at the documents. You're saying I can't sell the house? You can't sell what you don't own. If watching cheating spouses get outsmarted by the partners they betrayed makes your heart race, hit subscribe, because Victoria's about to learn that 16 years of marriage taught Ryan a few things about strategy. Victoria's face went white as the reality sank in. This is fraud. You tricked me into signing these papers. I didn't trick you into anything. We restructured our assets for legitimate tax reasons. You were present for every meeting with the accountant and attorney. You asked questions and signed willingly. I trusted you to protect our interests, not manipulate them for your benefit. And I trusted you not to have an affair with your yoga instructor while planning to divorce me and sell our house. Victoria's mouth fell open. How did you? I'm a business consultant, Victoria. I investigate people and situations for a living. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when my own wife started acting like a stranger? She sat down heavily in the chair across from me. This isn't how I wanted this to happen. How did you want it to happen? You filed for divorce while I was in Paris and tried to sell our house without telling me. What part of that plan involved consideration for my feelings? I felt trapped. You're always gone, and when you're here, we don't really connect anymore. I felt like I was living with a roommate who visited occasionally. I understood that feeling more than she knew. So you decided the solution was to blow up everything we'd built together? I decided the solution was to start over, for both of us. By stealing half the value of a house you don't own? Victoria looked at me with tears in her eyes. What happens now? Now you deal with the consequences of your choices. Over the next week, Victoria's carefully planned exit strategy collapsed piece by piece. The house sale fell through when the buyer's attorney discovered the title issue. Victoria's divorce attorney had to explain that she'd filed papers based on asset information that was completely incorrect. More importantly, the investigator's report revealed that Trevor, her financial advisor boyfriend, had been dating Victoria specifically because he thought she was wealthy. He'd been encouraging her to divorce me quickly and liquidate assets so he could invest her money in high-risk schemes that would generate substantial commissions for him. Trevor had convinced Victoria that she needed to maximize her financial independence by converting real estate into more liquid investment vehicles. When Victoria told him about the house situation, Trevor suddenly became unavailable. His interest in starting a new life together evaporated along with the money he'd been counting on. Victoria called me crying on the following Friday. Ryan, I made a terrible mistake. Can we talk about reconciliation? It's too late for that, Victoria. But the house, our marriage, everything we built together, you threw all of that away when you chose to lie and cheat rather than communicate. I'm not interested in rebuilding with someone who sees our marriage as a business transaction to be dissolved when it becomes inconvenient. I filed for divorce the following Monday. Given Victoria's affair and her attempt to fraudulently sell marital assets, my attorney was confident about the outcome. The divorce proceedings revealed just how calculated Victoria's plan had been. She'd emptied our joint savings account the day before calling me in Paris, transferring $75,000 to her personal account. She'd also canceled my health insurance and changed the passwords on our shared credit cards. But she'd made one crucial mistake. Everything she'd done was based on the assumption that she owned half of our assets. When that assumption proved false, her entire strategy collapsed. The final divorce settlement left Victoria with her car, her personal belongings, and about $30,000 from the savings account she'd emptied. The house, which was worth $850,000, remained with the LLC I controlled. I offered to buy out her beneficiary interest for $50,000, which was generous considering she'd tried to steal $425,000 from me. She accepted without negotiation. 6 months after that phone call from Paris, I was sitting in my home office when the doorbell rang. Victoria stood on the porch looking tired and older than her 39 years. "I came to get my pottery equipment from the garage," she said. "Of course, it's all still there." As she loaded boxes into her car, she paused. "Ryan, I want you to know I'm sorry, not just about the house, but about how I handled everything. You deserved better than lies and betrayal." "Yes, I did. I was afraid to tell you I was unhappy because I thought you'd try to talk me out of it. I thought it would be easier to just leave. It would have been easier, to be honest. We might have been able to work something out, or at least ended things with dignity." Victoria nodded. "I know that now." After she left, I walked through the house one more time. The photos were gone, the personal touches that had made it feel like a home rather than just a place to sleep between trips. But it was still my house, bought with my money, protected by legal structures I'd put in place to preserve what I'd worked to build. A year later, I met Sarah, a fellow consultant who understood the demands of travel and the importance of trust in a relationship. We moved slowly, building something based on honest communication rather than assumptions and hidden agendas. I never heard from Victoria again, though mutual friends mentioned she'd moved to Phoenix and was working at a marketing firm. She'd learned, I hoped, that freedom isn't something you steal from someone else's life. It's something you build with integrity and courage. That phone call from Paris had changed everything, but not in the way Victoria intended. Instead of destroying my life, her betrayal had revealed the importance of protecting what matters and being careful who you trust with your future. Sometimes the most expensive lessons are the ones that teach you who people really are when they think no one is watching.